Well, I must say that I have to agree with the brilliant theologian and philosopher Forrest Gump when he said, "You can learn a lot from other people's shoes. Where they've been, what they do." And then you might remember in the movie, he points to the shoes of a woman sitting next to him on the bench, and he says, "Those look like comfortable shoes. I wish I had a pair of shoes like them. I bet you could walk all day in shoes like that." To which the woman replies, "My feet hurt." Our feet hurt, don't they, sometimes? Especially when you've been walking or standing all day. Experts tell us that there are 26 bones, 33 joints, and more than 100 ligaments, muscles, and tendons in the human foot. No wonder that foot pain or foot issues can create pain in our legs and our hips and our backs. And what's more, this one really blew me away. There are 250,000 sweat glands on the foot. And I believe it, especially during summer marching band practice or wrestling season. Shoes can tell a lot, a great deal, about the people who wear them. And so that made me wonder, if you didn't already know me, what could you learn from my shoes? Now, I know some of you in the back maybe can't see them, but I have some shoes across the front here, and I wonder what you could tell about me. What would you learn about me? Well, you know I had to put the cowgirl boots up here, right? Because you can take the girl out of Wyoming, but you can't take the Wyoming out of the girl. And I have my hiking boots, still with mud on them. There have been many miles walked in those shoes. And then you see tennis shoes, my running shoes, well, which I haven't worn for a while, but there they are. My sandals, a pair of flats, I think, maybe, and my heels over there. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, practical, and for a purpose for the most part. Today, we have shoes for everything, don't we? And every occasion imaginable. We have our Sunday shoes, our business casual shoes, our casual Friday shoes, our dress shoes, our prom shoes, our dance shoes, wrestling shoes, basketball shoes. There are even band shoes. Did you know there are band shoes? Concert choir shoes, rain boots, snow boots, horse riding boots. You name it, and there's probably a shoe that fits. If you were to look in Jesus' closet, however, you wouldn't find much but a pair of simple leather sandals. In Jesus' day, shoes were a matter of practicality and functionality to protect their feet. A simple sole on the bottom and a plain leather strap, and that was their shoe. The roads were dusty and rocky, and in the dry season, there could be 2, 3, maybe more inches of sand and dirt on the roads. Kind of like walking on the beach, but it's dry, and so you sink in, and this is that real fine dirt and dust. And then you can imagine in the rainy season, those 2 or 3 or 4 inches of dust swell to wet, sticky, yucky, muddy muck. So for this reason, it was common for households to have large pitchers of water and a basin at the door of their home, explicitly for visitors, guests, family members, and friends to have their feet washed as they came in the door. Now notice I didn't say it was there for them to wash their own feet. It wasn't like at my mom's house where you get to the door and from somewhere in the house she hollers, "Wipe your feet, take them off, and then come on in." And I never knew if she meant wipe your feet, your shoes, or take your feet off. I wasn't ever sure what she meant. But in Jesus' day, it was the task of the lowest ranking house servant, the lowest ranking servant, to wash the feet of those who entered the house. It was one of the most demeaning and filthy tasks of the culture. I mean, would you want that job? I agree with Teddy. I think I would rather call up Mike Rowe from the TV series Dirty Jobs and ask him to do it. Now, I know that we at Grace Church excel in the area of hospitality. We do a great job, and we help people feel welcome, and we do a good job of coffee hour and putting out goodies, and we certainly know how to feed people. But who would want that job of hospitality? To make matters worse, the roads in Jerusalem this particular week, as we were going into Holy Week, so that particular week there would have been hundreds and thousands of men, women, children, and their livestock trampling the roads in and out of Jerusalem. All there for the Passover festival. So great crowds were gathering. I mean, that's what this hoopla is all about, right? That's what the palm branches waving and the coats being laid on the ground and the shouting and singing of Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel. That's what we remember on this Palm Sunday weekend. Well, at the same time, we're inviting you to take a little glimpse down the road just a bit at what is to come. And there's all this excitement, and what fed the fuel of that excitement of Jesus' arrival was the fact that just a few days before that, he raised a man from the dead. Now, I don't care what century you're in, that kind of news travels fast, right? And people wanted to come and see and find out and see this man and see what was going on. They had heard that he brought Lazarus back from the grave, and they couldn't stay away. They thought, maybe this is the one. This is the one. This was the guy who was going to lead the people of Israel out from under the Roman oppression and deliver them into their long-awaited freedom and glory. The stories of all that he had done, the witnesses who told of his teachings and his miracles, and those that maybe just heard him preach and speak a time or two, all of that contributed to this idea that Jesus, a mighty king, was coming to Jerusalem to proclaim victory once and for all. The thing is, he didn't arrive the way that they expected. And we know that all throughout Jesus' life and ministry, he turned expectations upside down. They expected this king to arrive on a mighty and bold, domineering stallion. But instead, he arrives on what? A donkey. And depending on which translation or which book of the gospel you read, it's not just the donkey, but beside the donkey is its nursing foal. Quite the opposite of a bold and domineering stallion. They expected brute force, military experience, and expertise to overthrow the government, yet what they got was a servant king, a servant preaching peace, mercy, and loving your neighbor. And then a few days later, sitting at a meal with his disciples, he did the unexpected again. And I invite you to listen to how the scene unfolds in the Gospel of John, chapter 13, the first 17 verses. And I'm reading from Eugene Peterson's The Message. John chapter 13. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world to go to the Father. Having loved his dear companions, he continued to love them right to the end. It was supper time. The devil by now had Judas, son of Simon the Iscariot, firmly in his grip, all set for the betrayal. Jesus knew that the Father had put him in complete charge of everything, that he came from God and was on his way back to God. So he got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his apron. When he got to Simon Peter, Peter said, "Master, you wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but it will be clear enough to you later." Peter persisted, "You're not going to wash my feet ever." Jesus said, If I don't wash you, you can't be a part of what I'm doing." You got to love Peter. He's just all in, right? All or nothing. And he says, "Master," said Peter, "not only my feet, wash my hands and my head." Jesus said, "If you've had a bath in the morning, you only need your feet washed now, and you're clean from head to toe. My concern, you understand, is holiness, not hygiene. So now you're clean, but not every one of you." He knew who was betraying him. That's why he said, "Not every one of you." After he had finished washing their feet, he took his robe, put it back on, and went back to his place at the table. Then he said, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You address me as teacher and master, and rightly so. That is what I am. So if I, the master and teacher, washed your feet, you must now wash each other's feet. I've laid down a pattern for you. What I've done, you do. I'm only pointing out the obvious. A servant is not ranked above his master. An employee doesn't give orders to the employer. If you understand what I'm telling you, act like it and live a blessed life." For all those who have ears to hear, the word of God for the people of God. One of the things that is important to know when you read the book of John is that there is always more than meets the eye. For John, there is always a deeper meaning. There's rich symbolism and multi-layered lessons within his words. He frequently tells a story underneath a story underneath a story. And so what that means is that at a deeper level, John 13 does not have much to do with foot washing at all. Jesus' actions are much bigger than dirty feet in a cultural practice. The whole passage is about what one author calls incarnating into a world of pain and brokenness on behalf of those in need. Incarnating into a world of pain and brokenness on behalf of those in need. In other words, it's about Jesus entering the world's pain and brokenness on our behalf, becoming a servant to those who serve and follow him. Jesus takes on the role of a house servant, the lowest position of servants, and washes the disciples' feet. Now, he's an educated man. He's a rabbi. He's a spiritual leader and teacher. He's performed miracles upon miracles. He's changed people's lives. He's shown them time and time again the power and authority he has in God. He is the Son of God. And yet, he symbolically takes all of that off when he takes off his outer robe and sets it aside. And he picks up a towel and a basin of water and washes his followers' feet. Now, how many leaders can you name today that would take off their suit jacket or their high heels or their sports coat or their designer sweater and put on an apron, pick up a washcloth, and wash the feet of those who they work with or who work for them? Let's not even go that far. Let's not even put that expectation on. How many leaders do you know today that would take out their own trash? Or change the toilet paper roll in the staff bathroom. Jesus is showing the disciples that no one person is greater than anyone else, regardless of position, status, education, experience, or title. Now, he doesn't ignore the positions, he doesn't ignore the titles and the rules around them or the expectations around them, and you work within them, but he's telling them and telling us that you work from an attitude of service to one another. And notice who's in the room with him when all of this goes down. Who's in the room? The disciples, right? It's not the crowds outside or the religious leaders or the local authorities. It's not the marginalized of society, the children, strangers, and widows. It's none of them. It's Jesus' followers in the room with him. His closest companions, his apprentices, those who have been with him throughout his ministry and who will carry on once Jesus is gone. It's us. It's us, church, that are in the room with him. It's not them this time. It's not them out there. It's us. We are to be the ones to show what it means to be church, to serve one another. And we can't and don't do a very good job of that if we are worried about who is better than the other, or who deserves recognition or promotion, or who is too good or not good enough to carry out any given task. Well, I'm one of the pastors. I can't possibly get out the VBS material. Well, I'm one of the pastors. I don't want to set up the food. I don't want to clean up, that's for sure. I'm one of the pastors. We are to be the ones to show what it means to be church. And we can't and don't do a very good job if we are wrapped up in gossip or triangulating one against the other, or we're wrapped up in emotionally charged issues and arguments where no one wins and people only get hurt. It doesn't get much more clear than Jesus doing the most basic, intimate, humbling act of washing feet to show the importance of what it means to serve. Washing feet. About the only feet I would want to wash is that of a baby, because they're still cute. And I know there are people out there who like feet, but think about that, washing someone's feet. It's not like when we were kids in the summer and we rinse our feet off with the garden hose. This is an act of humility, an act of service. To kneel in front of someone who perhaps does have a different title or higher status, or they're a leader, to kneel in front of them, to kneel in front of one another and proceed to wash their feet in between their toes, and making sure that everything gets rinsed off and is patted dry. It's an intimate act of service to one another. This passage is about two things: Jesus taking on the lowliest act and becoming a servant king. A servant king. And second, it's about you and me coming to learn what it means to serve by the example of Jesus. And I'm not talking necessarily about serving those outside these walls. And I'm not talking only about bringing in donations or giving donations or great hospitality or volunteering once a week or once a month. That is a part of it. But in this case, this whole passage gives insight and instruction on how to be church. And it has very little, if anything, to do with denominational polity, governing bodies, and institutional religion. It has everything to do with Jesus, the Son of God, the King of Kings, and the Lord of Lords, being the King that we least expected and most wanted. A servant king, calling us to take on the same kind of attitude. His followers didn't always have that kind of attitude, and neither do we. Just a few passages before this, the disciples were arguing. Remember, they were arguing among themselves. Do you remember what they were arguing about? Who was the greatest? Right? Who is the greatest among the followers? That inner circle, Jesus' disciples, they're arguing about it, right? Oh, Al's, he's pretty good. He's probably the greatest. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. John's been here a long time, though, so he's been serving. He does a lot behind the scenes. He's probably the greatest. Oh, wait, well, Bert was a DS. Oh, he's probably the greatest, right? Right? Oh, I don't know. Susie Adams over there, she does a lot behind the scenes to run that company. Who is the greatest among us? They were arguing about that. They wanted to know who ranked where and what was the order of importance and who fit what role. And knowing this and knowing that his time was limited, Jesus wanted to make sure that he did everything he could to help them understand what was truly at stake and what was truly important: to love and to serve one another. I came across this story, a legend, really, of St. Francis of Assisi. In his early days, he was very wealthy, and nothing but the best of the best was good enough for him. He was an aristocrat of the aristocrats, the legend goes. But he was ill at ease, and there was no peace in his soul. And one day he was riding alone outside the city when he saw a leper, a mass of sores, a horrible, horrible sight. And ordinarily, Francis would have just recoiled in horror from this wreck of humanity. But something moved within him. And he dismounted from his horse, and he flung his arms around the leper and hugged him and embraced him. And as he embraced him, the leper turned into the figure of Jesus. The legend says that the nearer we are to suffering humanity, the nearer we are to God. The more we understand what it means to serve, the more we are Jesus to each other. The more we show the world what love truly is. May it be so.